A Jewish community of considerable importance had existed in Rome for ages past. How had the Jews established themselves there? Futile question. Where have they not established themselves? It is said that Pompey brought large numbers of Jewish prisoners to Rome. The unity of the Jews, an ancient and characteristic quality of theirs, led the already existent community to purchase their liberty. In the time of Caesar, they even played an important role. Like all great men, Caesar had his whims, and one of them was the Jews. He encouraged them to excess, so that the great Cicero already found cause for complaint. There was again a large increase in their numbers in the time of Augustus, so that by now Rome was full of them. They were, as a matter of fact, expelled from Rome by the Caesar Tiberius for having extorted money from a Roman matron for their temple, but within a short time they were back again. The truth is that they were not so numerous as they were visible. They crowded into the forum at every public assembly. If a favorite of theirs happened to be speaking, they were thrown into such an agitation of joy that the Roman rabble was dragged along in their enthusiasm. But if, as against this, it was an enemy of theirs who ascended the rostrum, then, the heavens defend us, there arose such a tumult, such a sneezing and coughing and whistling and interrupting, that the speaker trembled to attack them publicly. Even the great Cicero was afraid of them, and when he had something bad to say about the Jews, he lowered his voice and spoke in an aside. What a sight they were when one of their favorites came marching in triumph through the gates of Rome and up the Capitol, or when one of their supporters died. What music of lamentation pealed through the city! I remember once seeing them as they received a Jewish deputation from abroad, or it may have been one of their princes who was visiting Rome. It was as though the city was inhabited by nothing but Jews. The streets were aflutter with their gaudy national costumes, donned for the occasion. They led forth in parade their parchment scrolls, which they called their holy books, and the sound of their singing and jubilation deafened the city. I could only wonder that the authorities did not interfere. But all this was in the days of Augustus. Augustus stood by the traditions of Caesar, and therefore by the privileges he had accorded the Jews. That was the time when Rome belonged to them. But the most pernicious influence in Rome was that of the Jewish women. These had insinuated themselves into the highest society, and served the Roman matrons as purveyors of love philters compounded according to secret recipes, amulets, and precious oils. Smooth of tongue, they became secret advisers to the higher Roman circles. Side by side with their love philters, they smuggled into the Roman palaces their alien faith, propagated the greatness of their God, sang the glories of the temple in Jerusalem, and instilled in Roman matrons the belief that all dreams would be fulfilled for one who sent a sacrifice to the temple. Women have always been the propagators of alien faiths and cults in society. They fall easily into the toils of exotic religions, attracted by incense, miracles, and the other tricks employed by the priests. Oh, those Jewish women had garnered in more than one Roman matron, set her against the gods of her country, and enrolled her among the worshippers of Jehovah. They were a plague, a visitation in the imperial city, those Jewish women. Among these purveyors of drugs and perfumes and devotees of the Jewish religion, there was one who had achieved high popularity. She was known as Dark Hannah because she went about swathed in dark and mystic veils like a vestal. She said she had taken a vow that as long as the sea separated her from the temple of her God, she would not put on colored fabrics and shawls. She stood out among the other women of her kind for her wide insight, her practical cleverness, and her physical beauty. The veil which fell over her face did not quite hide the shimmer of the olive skin beneath, and the luster of her large dark eyes in their long, finely molded sockets. She had become the special favorite of the ladies of the Roman aristocracy. It was told of her that she had an inexhaustible store of recipes, brought with her from her own mysterious country, for the mixing of love philters. But these were of less effect than her intelligence and human insight. She had a mind as lucid as sunlight. Men, no less than women, sought her out for her counsel. I, too, had occasion to meet her more than once, but this was later, when I was stationed in Jerusalem, and in the midst of vastly different circumstances. This Dark Hannah played a role of some importance in Rome through the mere fact that the matrons of the city consulted her in their love difficulties. She advised them how to act in various situations. She was quiet in her bearing, listened long and patiently, spoke little, just throwing in a word or an observation from time to time, all with such skill that the matron scarcely observed the intrusion of the other's thoughts, and attributed the ideas and suggestions to her own wisdom. Frequenting, as she did, the homes of the most prominent senators, dark Hannah was thoroughly initiated into the complications of Roman politics. Often she was in possession of facts to which even the senators were not yet privy. The best informed asserted that dark Hannah was an agent of the Jewish Prince Agrippa, who had sent her to Rome to work up good feeling for him at the court in senatorial circles. Dark Hannah had won the confidence of little Claudia, whom she supplied with perfumes, unguents, and potions. It is said that she was an evil influence over her, for while Claudia was still a child, dark Hannah filled her with the confused and confusing mysticisms of her religion, teaching her, for instance, that God was going to send down a deliverer who would lift up the Jewish people. That same bad influence dark Hannah likewise exerted on many Roman matrons, and in particular on a famous beauty who was pursued by all the senators and generals, a certain Poppaea, who later became empress and was secretly converted to the faith of the Jews. Dark Hannah came to Pilate's help. It is said that he made her a definite promise. If she, on her side, would help him to make the match, and he would become procurator of Judea, he, on his side, would treat her people with special consideration. He would, for instance, return the sacred vestments of the high priest, which were being kept in the Antonia fortress. There were other favors which he promised, but this one in connection with the vestments of the high priest was the most important, for the Jews believed that the vestments had been brought down from heaven. It was due to dark Hannah, in the end, that little Claudia turned her affections toward Pilate. But even then, the post of procurator of Judea still remained to be won. He had taken only the first step. The cunning Caesar Tiberius detested flattery. It was not the proper approach to him. Action alone could convince him, and in exchange for so important a position, it would have to be action of special value. Before long, Pilate found the opportunity to demonstrate his devotion to the Caesar and to win his regard. Germanicus, the general who had fallen out of favor, went to Alexandria. We, his former soldiers, persuaded him to this course. Pontius Pilate insisted that he, Germanicus, should seek somewhere outside of Rome, and preferably in the great city of Alexandria, that field of effectiveness which Tiberius had taken away from him in Rome, and I, following Pilate's lead, took up the argument. We kept on repeating to him, "Make good use of your popularity throughout the empire while it lasts. Your fortune lies outside of Rome." He was reluctant. We urged again. "Alexandria is the training ground for the great of Rome." "Yes," he said, "but remember Pompey and Antony, and Caesar too would have been caught in the tangles of Alexandria if it had not been for Herod." We went on talking, and he finally walked into the trap which the subtle Tiberius had prepared for him, Alexandria. And there, in Alexandria, he was, as you know, poisoned by the governor of Syria, on command from Tiberius. When the knowledge of his death came to Rome, the rabble rushed into the streets and called upon Tiberius and the Senate to give them back Germanicus. The emperor, a coward by nature, like every traitor, took fright, not having foreseen that the death of Germanicus would stir up such resentment. He tried to cleanse himself of guilt by arranging an imposing funeral for his victim. He was loudest in his lamentations for the dead Germanicus, but even at that moment, before the earth had covered the murdered general, Pilate was circulating among the senators and the plebs the rumor that Germanicus had been plotting to wrest the empire from Tiberius and had gathered an army to that end in Egypt and Asia. It was a dangerous thing for Pilate to do in those days, and he had to proceed with the utmost caution, for the general love for Germanicus still ran high, and only here and there could Pilate drop his poison into receptive ears. But Pilate was resolute. He had even prepared forged documents which supported his contentions, and asserted that Germanicus had drawn him, as well as myself, into the conspiracy. He brought me before Tiberius to testify that Germanicus had hired me to proceed to Asia in order to enroll in the Asiatic legions. Pilate succeeded. He washed Tiberius clean, and in the process he trampled underfoot the name and reputation and memory of the hero, his own commander, who had led him and me through the dark forests of Germany to glorious victories for Rome. Pilate's reward was not long in coming. A few months after the death of Germanicus, when the rage of the plebs had been soothed with the sight of much blood shed in gladiatorial shows, all of them arranged, of course, to this end by the emperor, the marriage of Pilate with the emperor's stepdaughter Claudia was celebrated with much pomp in the temple of Diana. After the wedding, when the bridegroom wanted to enter the litter of his young bride, he found his way barred by the emperor. Instead of his wife, Pilate was handed a parchment scroll with the emperor's orders to proceed at once to Caesarea, and thence to Jerusalem, where he was to take up the office of Procurator of Judea. "And my wife?" asked the new husband. "For the time being you will leave your wife at Caesar's court. You know that it is not the custom for procurators or generals to take their wives with them into the provinces. Later on, perhaps, I will send her to you," the old fox answered, and the shadow of a cruel smile trembled on his sensuous, overhanging lower lip. When Pilate came to pay his last respects to Caesar before leaving Rome, the latter gave him his final instructions. "Pilate, you have no doubt heard that I do not like to change my officials. Do you know why? The officials who settle in a country are like flies settling on a body. When the flies have had their fill of blood, they become quiet and peaceable. See to it that I don't have to send a new, thirsty fly to the province of Judea." When Pilate set out for Judea, he took me along because of our old friendship. I received the post of chief counselor to the procurator, liaison officer, and commander of the Antonian fortress guarding the temple in Jerusalem.